Another room.
Am I going that way? Yeah.
Hello, welcome to the Java Web Users Group. And I hope you had a great second day at the NoFluff Stuff Conference. And we're just going to talk about, have a panel discussion about Whither Java, and what we are going to talk about is generally the Java Web User Group meets every month, basically, and since 2004, it was originally the Structured Users Group, and we have an online presence, and you can check us out by looking at our link. So, my name is Peter Pilgrim. I am a Sun Java champion, working in financial services. I have here on my right Mark Venusi. On the left is Phil Zone and Kevin Sorensen. So we are going to talk about Java and the future of Java as a platform. So I don't know about you, but my experiences of Java development lately, I found that Java is a little bit too slow to get started quickly. And in this way, what I mean is that I started a project, and it took me about a day and a half to actually build the thing correctly in the way that I wanted it. And I think I've actually been spoiled by Hibernate and Toplink and all the rest of the Spring frameworks. There's one more person who has just arrived very late. Let me introduce Louis Ennett. So, I'm going to take it and give the questions, and now you people here to give feedback. So we are the Java Web User Group, and I want to ask you, what's your favorite web application framework now? Yeah.
Go to one person.
Ruby on Rails.
What is the competition for Java regarding Rails, in your opinion?
I know, for me personally, I'm not really comfortable with Java. I've had a talk, so I know precisely what you're saying about startup. It's very easy to get started.
Yeah.
I think that's still something I don't see in the Java framework space at all, but it's not anything where I can say, bang, I've downloaded this thing and I've tried it, and 20 minutes later, it's on and off. And whereas I admit, obviously, as soon as you get into anything more complex, obviously, different pressures come into play. But that first 20 minutes, I don't see any of the Java frameworks that solve that first 20-minute problem for me to interesting part.
So, go ahead.
I think one of the things about does this work? One of the things about Java as a platform, I guess, is with Ruby you really have, and I'm sure there are people in the Ruby community who would disagree with this, but you basically have one serious choice, and that's Rails. With Java, you have, even now, after all these years, such a multitude of web frameworks to choose from, and it's a difficult choice, and that choice hasn't really gotten any easier in the last few years. In fact, if anything, it's gotten more difficult. And then you have, obviously, a variety of back-end technologies to work with. And I think here, there is more, I guess, consensus on on what the best technologies are, although certainly it's not a complete consensus, but I think that a lot of projects these days are going for the likes of Spring and Hibernate in the kind of Java world. But when you have such a variety to choose from, it's very difficult to kind of put together just a single kind of stack. And the question is, does it actually make sense to put together a single stack? But if you put together a single stack, like what's happening with the likes of Grails, then you have an advantage in the sense that you have something which is pre-canned, you can get going more quickly on. But then, don't you lose out in the sense that potentially you're closing off choices or making it more difficult to make choices that you perhaps might otherwise have wanted to make, given all the choice that is available in the Java platform. So, I suppose from my point of view, the bottom line is not so much the problem about being able to get started in 20 minutes, because the project lasts a lot longer than 20 minutes. The project lasts months, perhaps years. So I think what's the problem with Java at the moment is being able to kind of sustain rapid development. You can kind of get maybe take a bit longer to get going than the likes of Rails. And when your project's small, you can kind of move it ahead quite quickly. But I think the problem with Java at the moment is being able to sustain that pace for the large project.
All right, Kev, what's your opinion on this?
No, I agree with there is a problem with Java and its startup cost. It's not the startup cost is not only in time, but actually you need to make quite a big investment of your own time, not only to learn language, but also to learn these frameworks and use them. So I'm a company from my background is I do a lot of freelance work and a lot of work with a lot of small to medium-sized companies. I'm actually from small companies, and they're mostly in the media sector, and they usually come to me with a brief on the back of an envelope that looks like, can you do X and Y, and then 2 minutes later, can you do Z as well? And for that one, it doesn't really matter which framework you start with, because by the time they finish their specification, which is usually halfway through the project, it's you've had to write a lot of custom code anyway. So the advantage for me of using Java in that sense is that Java can communicate across a lot of different layers and a lot of different platforms. Just to give you a specific example, I was asked to come up with something that would allow a Flash front end to get messages from a back end. We started off with Flash actually just calling a server and getting a very simple XML message from the server. And it then graduated to us actually writing custom Flash server, an XML server in Java. And I was able to do that because the whole application was written in Java to start off with. Had I written it in PHP, which is my other web programming language, or Ruby, it would have been a lot more difficult because those languages, or at least specifically PHP, I can't talk that much about Rails, but Ruby, but specifically PHP is mostly a web programming language. And if you want to do something based on the server, like write a specific application server, then you have to either go to the language or you have to kind of budget a bit to do it. So this is, for me, the strength of Java.
Yeah.
But I agree with the thing, it's pretty hard to get started.
I think that's might change. Now that we have JRuby and working on that application server, I know there's some of the guys out there that are using more modern frameworks like App-Freeze to get started a little bit quicker. There's loads of interest in scripted languages to do that prototype. So Lewis, do you have something to say on
Yeah, I mean,
web frameworks in Java?
certainly, I mean, to address the kind of fragmentation that's occurred, I mean, there's a sort of stack of tools which have typically been chosen by, combination, say, Spring MVC or Struts 2 or Struts together with Spring in the kind of middleware and Hibernate with data systems. So I think that doesn't look as clean in 20-minute zone as the kind of full stack kind of Ruby on Rails thing. And I think there has been a kind of rallying call, by Gavin King with the Scene project, and that kind of looks quite interesting. The way that's going to, they're pushing it forward as to the JCP, to try and get that as a full stack, and I suppose it's trying to be what EJB should have been.
Yeah.
EJB 3 should have been C, but I guess they couldn't get enough agreement on it.
So you've had some experience with Scene and that sort of vertical slice from back end to...
I mean, I had to play with it, and I think, it's actually, that's quite exciting in terms of addressing the sort of single stack thing that a lot of people, would be comfortable with, a kind of end-to-end solution. But the great thing about Java is that you don't have to do that, we still have these kind of segmented technologies, and so you can swap out the new technology, you can swap out the systems technology. But I think it's important now that there is a viable and not necessarily too cumbersome end-to-end solution. I mean, obviously there are kind of more niche solutions like Life, which have been out there and kind of progressed the idea of maybe you want for certain use cases just an end-to-end tool that can deal with everything in hopefully quite an elegant way.
Yeah, I've had experience of that back in the day with something called Express Framework, and Vive seems very similar in that sort of way. But one thing I think, I'll probably talk about this in later, when we say what's the future, is the continuation. That's very intriguing. That reminds me of how you used to program BASIC. So,
I'm just trying to think of something clever to say after basically all those points were covered. But I think the main thing is, I don't really know where the 20 minutes came from, because, developing any web application, fine, it's great if you want to get a one-page solution working for a web application, but there's no such things as a 20-minute solution. It may take a very short amount of time to develop something, but when you look in the long term, I see a lot of these technologies coming up where you're flying and you're producing something in minutes. You've got a broker and you're publishing this data and doing this and that. You've got these wizards and the clips. But then you look at the long term and possibly limitations with frameworks, because every framework's got a limitation. Coming from a struts background, you just hit a wall and you can't go any further until you maintain it yourself or you wait for the next release. So that 20 minutes that you grab right at the start, starts at hare and the tortoise, because after 3 weeks you suddenly come to a great halt because you can't fundamentally do what you need to finish. And that's why frameworks are not what Java relies on. Frameworks are the basis to help you get what you need to do working. But there's plenty of other ones that you plug in around the side. So I don't just use one framework in my solutions, mainly because if that's current technology suite sort of shifts, and they do from time to time, then you basically get left with sort of deprecations and sort of an isolated framework that no one's maintaining. Whereas my personal opinion is I think heavy framework reliance is sort of a bit of a bad thing. I think there's some great established ones out there. Log4j, things like that, time and testing. But sort of the new framework, I think it's too early. I think it's wait and see.
Okay, so we discussed that. Is anyone here a beginning Java or web developer who has to face a mountain, had the experience of facing a mountain of technologies and stacks to learn? No? Okay. So the future of Java and the web. What are the most innovative things that you have all seen out there? I'm going to say one. I think it's wicked. What we saw in the previous BOF, I thought that was quite impressive. It was because it did not have an XML, one single XML configuration. But apart from web.xml. Which everybody understands. It was just a survey filter for wiki framework.
The same for the text, but there is no string like instructions. The same for text file, but there is no yes type history, but it doesn't look like string.
Yeah, I've had a little bit of experience with Wicked because I just was playing with it today and following it to a certain extent on the last meeting we had of our group where we had a presentation on Wicked, and I had an opportunity to start a new project, and I thought, okay, well, it's only going to be a 2 or 3 week project, so I'll try Wicked, and I think it definitely passed the 20-minute test because I was up and running in less than 20 minutes, and I think that's one of the good things about the framework. I think there are some very interesting innovations, I think, around. I think that obviously we've got the likes of Ajax, with the likes of Ruby and Rails and so on. I think that another interesting one is OSGI. How many of you are familiar with OSGI? So it's something which people are hearing about and is being spoken about a bit more.
And you think that actually is going to impede on the Java web application space in some degree? Yes.
I think that it certainly affects the enterprise space, and I think that web applications are, I guess, just to a certain extent, well, at least in some ways, just an extension of the enterprise space. So I think that if you're a Java web developer, you'll probably come into contact with it in some shape or form. I think that most of us, when we work on applications, we work. They are partly web applications, but they're not. Very rarely just web applications. I mean, we normally have to do things like, talk to the database or interact with messaging systems and so on and so forth. So, I mean, I guess there are people around who program Java who don't do anything apart from web applications, but I think those people are probably fairly sort of few and far between. I think most of us have to have a bit more of a kind of broader knowledge and understanding of all the kind of aspects that they might have to deal with in the enterprise space.
Okay, Kevin, I know you program purely with, mostly against the core APIs, so you can't probably answer the question, what's the most innovative thing you've seen in the framework? But what would you like to see in Java?
It's not quite true. I do use the framework. It's just I do quite a lot of work, which doesn't need to use that. So, in terms of innovative stuff in Java, I quite like FX. What I've seen of it so far, because it's
Java effects.
Java effects. Yeah. Okay, so this is. I mean, there's now, because Flash has been so successful out there, Microsoft is trying to develop a Flash killer in Silverlight, yeah. And now Sun has come up with something similar within Java FX that they would like to.
And not forgetting Adobe, sorry to cut across it, not for
So I mean, it basically is one of many, but it is an interesting thing. We're talking about the future of Java, and this might be something that revives applets. This is what some really hopes, that whole technology Java applets might actually have a new use of life. But I don't know. So I'm interested because again, it offers a chance to have this integration between all these different layers of technology, whereas before. If you want to do some really clever stuff, you have to do either Ajax or Flash or something else. It might be interesting to go back and see what happens now if you use something to do with that. So we'll just see. I don't know.
Bruce?
I think what's been interesting really is all of the focus that's happened around Ajax and the client-side richness in general has kind of cast a light on the fact that the web developers need to be web developers, not Java developers. So So there are two ways to deal with it. You need to get away from the problem by getting your server-side tools that will generate all the JavaScript that you need, or you need to get your hands dirty and use much more client-side tools, and then you sort of take a lot of logic out of the server side and put it into the client. What's impressed me has been GWT in terms of it's taken swing programming to the web. Basically, it's very interesting, and arguably it's a slightly less leaky abstraction over the kind of the basic request response lifecycle than say JSF. But I think that's perhaps the most successful attempt at abstracting away all the complexity of the interaction. I mean, and also on a more nuts and bolts level, DWR is kind of impressive because you forget how complex it is when it just works.
Question. Frederick.
I just wanted to mention that none of you mentioned dynamic languages as a huge trend. I find this particularly interesting since we just had a discussion about Ruby on Rails. And I'd like to comment on your two remarks that you actually, in real life, you need to manage a large code base and you change shape, so it must be amenable to refactorings that are guaranteed not to break anything. And I think that lies anything that is not statically typed and, if possible, generics, and all that is a huge mistake.
So it's a huge, yeah, go on.
I mean, I don't know if you count JavaScript as a dynamic scripting language, but I mean, I've probably got as many classes in it from the JavaScript side of things, proper JavaScript classes, getters and setters, as I have a Java class base for my custom software. So I don't think I wouldn't dismiss it as just as important, but you know, it is nice when you need to refactor a class in terms of supporting, so it's going to break all over the place. Okay, I'm late, I like that support. But yeah, very practical. Talking about the really good use of sort of technologies doesn't necessarily sit too much in Java. But I went to the Google talk a couple of weeks ago in London, and they have a thing called Google Gigs, which basically sort of synchronizes a web page with a remote web application via a Jetty database, which persists in sort of a mini app. Brilliant. Because I had a customer who's got this Microsoft Access database on all of his laptops for all of his employees, and they tap in reports and they get back to the office and they submit. So he has to pay about £200 per license for every one of those laptops just to run an Access database. So when you just engineer a simple web page with Google Gears behind the scenes, that literally they type in reports, gets stored in a Jetty database, dock it onto the internet, picks up the connectivity, and synchronizes with your web application behind the scenes. That was one of the best technologies I've ever seen. And that's a quick get up and go. So we're talking about 20 minutes, so it's sort of like, within 5 minutes I had a sort of a synchronized persistence model on a web page, and that was brilliant. Very good.
Do you want to quickly respond to that question?
Yes, I just wanted to respond. Just wanted to respond very quickly to your point on dynamic languages. I think that in my personal perspective here, I think there is a place for dynamic languages. I think that the closer you get to, certainly in terms of a large system, the closer you get to the core of the system, I think the more you want it to be based on statically typed languages. The closer you get to the fringe of the system, I think that's where you get opportunities to use dynamic languages. Things tend to be a bit more changeable. If you get things wrong, then the costs aren't quite as great, and it's certainly advantageous to be able to make quick updates and that kind of thing. And so I think that if you approach it right, I think there's definitely a space for it. But one thing which does actually make me very nervous is the idea of a very large application based on purely dynamic language. And then you give it to a new team of developers and you say, make some big changes. And you have no, and unless you've got 100% test coverage, you cannot be almost certain that things are going to break.
Yes, I would imagine there'd be a lot of agile techniques in any dynamic language. You would need to fully test your application development.
It also needs to be a reality check, because a lot of these, I mean, we're all in an industry where 60% of projects fail, and they often fail because of changes that need to happen. And quite a lot of those things are in Java, .NET, JavaScript, static, dynamic, any frame you like. We're not very good at making changes, whether it's dynamic or static. I don't think that axis actually tells you very much at all.
I think it does have more of an impact, but yeah, you're right. Whatever the code change is going to be, implications for us probably.
We all of us think we know the arguments in favour of statically typed languages. The arguments have been around for a long, long time. I think we should actually ban ourselves from talking about how dangerous dynamic languages are until we have any evidence until we can actually tell the war stories of how we adopted these frameworks, we used Ruby on Rails, we used it in a project that was larger than its sweet spot, and it went horribly wrong. Now, I haven't met people yet who've been able to make those arguments. Until we have, why are we setting ourselves up as experts on this?
No, I don't think we're talking about the limitations of dynamic languages. I think we're talking about...
Well, that was the original question, was what are the limitations of dynamic languages? And so far, what we get is hearsay. It's the things that we think we should believe, because those are the arguments we've been telling ourselves.
I mean, there's a whole metric you could use in developing your architecture. One metric is constant change. The customer, the boss wants the application yesterday. So you take the choices and you follow up.
But that's a two-way argument, which you can make it static languages.
I mean, I'm not
because you can change the same thing.
Yeah.
Or you can say static type languages keep changing because it's a lot more recognition of type change.
Also, this issue that a lot of the issues like you get paid for making the pilot, which we're developing with, we're all happy. And we actually need is not to run an operating pilot, operating tests. You have to test it, not to say, yeah, this
Okay, we better wrap this up, and if anybody wants to continue, after party. Yeah. Okay. Cheers. Thank you.
Okay, so next one on NetBeans, Java and Ruby in one single IDE. I think anyway, it wants to go
way by going through a broker, which is currently difficult today. People have all sorts of problems digging through properties today because the internet was designed on an end-to-end principle. So one of the things that NQP will give people is safe non-end-to-end communication, which is kind of exciting.
So if I have an application which is a database, and you rule out how I migrate on
Of course, JMS is extremely popular, and ANQP will not pretend otherwise. One of the things that has been being worked on for some time now is a canonical mapping from JMS API to ANQP. And that's being used in production in partially completed format at least one bank. In the future, what we will have is a completed standard mapping from JMS to ANQP. We've done all sorts of tweaks inside the stack to support JMS completely. JMS has a number of quite peculiar properties that people thought up in the committees in the mid-90s, late 90s, which appear in ANQP in a way which some people might find a little peculiar. But they are there, and it will support JMS as well. So one good thing people are able to do is just get a JMS client that connects seamlessly to an AMQP broker. And because of the interop property, the JMS client should work with any AMQP broker, including one in hardware.
Can you talk a little bit about the capabilities of the broker?
Of the broker itself.
Can it correlate different messages, what sort of things do it?
In the spec, yes it can. So one of the things that we've been working on for version 10 of the spec is explicit message correlation. And I'm not going to try and give you a kind of crash course on that while I'm standing up here, but all of the documents that we're working on for getting the spec to version 10 are actually publicly accessible. There is a gyro which you can get to through www.nqp.org, where there are issues discussing topics like this. Some of them have been closed as a use to label, but the one you're talking about actually has design documents attached. So I recommend having a look at that. So can I ask people, how many of you have actually tried to use an AMQP broker so far? Nobody? Do you see any reason to do so without it being supported by languages? Are you all JMS happy?
I think the typical use cases with relay services, I think that's the case that I'd like to see it. But again, the scenario of two systems we don't have direct connectivity over here. Cannot be JMS on both ends and to get end up being bridged by all these breaks all the characteristics that the messaging system is in the first place. So I think there's going to be a big issue because some of that is not using technology.
Right. Who would agree with that? Neil's saying that there are cases which web services is targeting where, for some reason or another, it would be attractive to have a different approach. Is that fair enough?
I'm just saying, well, you know you can't have an end-to-end messaging solution. At some point, you're going to have to cross through either going from C# implementation or some esoteric broker to a JMS system. That's all scenario. We have to integrate, and the only thing that's really later to you that's got any standard behind it, HTTP web service. For me at the moment, that's my greatest interest in
So is that in particular to do with the use of HTTP, or is it to do more with the sort of trust boundaries?
In terms of, first thing is in terms of interoperability, and second in terms of I'm interested in talking about this as part of initially interesting. That is primarily it's interoperability. The last thing you really want to do is within your own company's systems is to have one system which has got a messaging system, another system which has got a messaging system, and then the link schedule to go over so I can see the interoperability between the JMS providers would be, so the messaging providers would be good, but especially if they're talking broker to broker communication.
Yes, I mean, I think the open web case is very interesting because that's one of the areas where messaging hasn't really permeated in the sense of MQ series, except by having the same version of MQ series in each end, which I think people find difficult. Another area where actually we do foresee adoption is around specific messaging protocols like FIX. I don't know how many of you working or have encountered the financial industry, but FIX stands for Financial Information Exchange Protocol. And what it is for passing trade orders around, like buy this many equities or sell so many equities, or you bought this many equities. And so what FIX has done is it's enabled different counterparties in the market to communicate in a standard way on trades, which has radically lowered the cost of doing business online. FIX, however, is a short-lived, transient point-to-point protocol basically just based on a TCP socket. And so putting MQP underneath will allow people to do things like settlement of business process, streaming market data, and all sorts of other things with the same benefits they get from FIX. So we think one of the areas of adoption will also be over the open web using FIX messages, but to do things like sending market data, which is a very popular service today.
you got examples? You said you got RabbitMQ, Cupid, OpenMQ. Examples hosted on the web that are accessible that users benchmarking,
Yes.
all that kind of stuff.
Let me answer that in several parts. We brought along some examples tonight because of the compressed schedule. I'd rather show them to people just after this if they're interested, or at the end of the talk for people who want to see that. The example that we wanted to show you is the creation of a mule and MQP, RabbitMQ server, and then deployment of that server to Amazon EC2 and some chat with that. Just, as a fun example. We also have on the RabbitMQ website a streaming, it's a streaming camera rather than streaming video. We have the sound in, you can have something cam stream, you can set up little nodes of camera stream messages, camera streams, and you can also look, is it up at the moment? It should be running. Sometimes we've got cameras connected to it. When we do, you can see people in the Ultrasoft offices tapping away on their computers and doing work. And we'll plug it up and get back to that, I guess. We also have some other examples of some fairly basic things like unit tests. And finally, you mentioned performance. We've actually done some pretty thorough performance testing, and we've managed to achieve on the order of 200,000 messages a second using 8 CPUs, which is quite a good number. That's actually on 2 4-ways, or was it 4 2-ways?
It was 4 2-ways.
4 dual core machines, or 2 CPU machines.
And annotation and stuff.
That was our implementation. It's also quite performant with persistent messaging as well. You can get several thousand messages a second, which is enough to do a lot of kind of business process type tasks. So, that code is available because it's open source, you can play with it and test it yourself. We found interesting properties when as you push the performance up, you have interesting issues like as you change the message size, obviously performance can change due to TCP window and things like that. So we're still working on the sort of tuning of that. But for the RabbitMQ perspective, we're very keen to see people come to the discussion list and participate in questions like, how do we get performance up, or I did this and it broke, etc.
So this bridge at the moment, you have to use a third party. I'm not at all, but I'm not really your answer. So at the moment, to go between JNS and MQP, we would have to use a bridging module.
To go to JMS and MQP, you use Cupid's JMS client, which doesn't need to go through Mule or any other ESP. I would recommend if you want to access AMQP from Java, to use a Java client that actually has a direct relationship with the AMQP implied API, which is true of our one, and there are other clients as well. We do, however, think that ESD is a very natural way to use a messaging system, and that's one of the reasons why we built a Mule adapter. We found that we built some adapters for other ESDs, and the shortest time it took to do one, which is quite a long commercial limited name, was about an hour and a quarter. So I think that's reasonably good evidence of a simple API.
So in the process, you say you've got published as well, open source. Because I'll be quite and you go to comparative testing as well against other messaging solutions.
Right. We are going to do a test which we're going to publish the results of in a fairly official kind of way. That will target a interesting financial use case. I can't say more than that at the moment. We have talked about some of the numbers we've achieved on our discussion lists, but we haven't made a public statement about it. The OpenAMQ broker has got a public statement on their website, and we haven't run the other brokers under load, so we're relying on other people to do comparisons. Of course, it would be good to do lots of comparisons between brokers. When we've got the interop perfect, then that's the time to do that. We haven't compared performance with JNS, by the way, but I think that there are some really fast JNS brokers out there. So I'm not sure how many people actually care about performance. I think it remains ultimately a very niche issue. if you're talking about things over the open web, we're often talking about, a couple of messages a minute. Of course, also for doing high-performance systems, you may choose to use other approaches like, RDMA or direct memory access system, caching. So this is a courses. So,
yeah, right. I had the impression that the Java web group is left in now.
Is it 25 now? It might be.
Well, it was supposed to start 8 o'clock, but clearly or not.
No, we were actually, you guys are at 25.
Oh, sorry,
We've got to be mindful. So, any more questions about MQP or RabbitMQ or Spring or Mule or Ajax? Ruby is good messaging. Okay, well, we'll stop now and hand over to the next lot. And we're going to go into a room that's right next to the registration point that you can go to as you came downstairs. And we'll have a demo, we'll be able to answer more questions if you're interested in looking at the detail. Looking at some code, we've got examples using Java integrated with Mule, and also we can show you around some source code for JavaScript and Ajax. Okay. Thanks very, very much.
So obliged. Hey, bye.